You've got questions, I've got answers. Hey Aficionados, Shawn here. Today we're doing frequently asked beer questions. I was hoping I was going to be able to avoid this one, but thank you to Keith from Beer Bros for nominating me for this. This was actually started by Tasting Nitch. I'll post a link to both of their channels down below. Check them out, although I'm sure if you're watching my channel, you're aware that both of them exist. Let's get into this one. I'm going to try and make it as quick as possible, but I've been known to ramble. We'll see how it goes. All right, so question number one is, how did I get into craft beer and why beer? So for me, I don't want to admit this, but it kind of started with Blue Moon. That was the first beer that I ever tried where I realized that beer could actually taste good. Then by the time I hit 21, walked into my first beer store and saw all the different craft beer brands and my mind exploded. I looked at the labels and I thought they were hilarious because some of them are so creative. At the time, Miguel and I planned to do a YouTube channel to do movie reviews and like Let's Plays and stuff like that. And I thought, hey, I mean, these beer labels are so interesting, they should be shared with the world. And that's how we decided we were going to start doing beer videos. Come to find out, there's a whole BeerTube community I didn't even realize existed. I started getting into watching other beer reviewers. We started recording our own reviews. Most of them did not make it up because the early ones that we did were really bad. So it started off with me just wanting to share these funny labels and try new beers. Evolved into me wanting to learn more about beer because I saw this community that was online already in terms of the BeerTube community. And I didn't want to get embarrassed by not knowing anything. And here I am now, almost 4 or 5 years later, still doing these beer reviews and loving beer more than ever. So for question number 2, what is my favorite beer? This one's pretty easy. It's Treehouse Green, Team Green. It has been my favorite beer ever since I first tried it, and I've yet to have another beer that's been able to replace it for me. Question number 3, if you could have one beer forever, what would it be? Well, personally, I don't like to drink a lot of the same beers. If I ever buy a 6-pack of something, I usually have a hard time getting through it, so drinking one beer forever almost sounds like a punishment to me. But if I had to pick one, it would probably be Treehouse Green. It's my favorite beer, and I never get tired of it. I've had my fair share of it at this point, and it's one that I could just see myself going back to for the rest of my life. So for question number 4, how can you drink so much and stay healthy? For the most part, I've pretty much stayed near the weight that I was when I started doing this and I started drinking craft beer. And that's because I watch what I eat. I don't eat a lot of junk food. I avoid like the ice creams, the desserts and stuff like that almost completely. I don't eat red meat most of the time. I eat a lot of like lean proteins like chicken, turkey. I try to eat enough vegetables and fruits and stuff like that. Another thing that's really helpful too, obviously, is staying active. I play baseball. I try to work out as often as I can. I drink water. I don't really drink that much soda or anything like that. My one thing that I indulge in is craft beer, and I try to even moderate that. So that's helped me maintain my weight. Question number 5. Are you an alcoholic? Well, first off, I feel really bad for Tasting Nitch if she's getting asked this question all the time. I don't think I've ever actually been asked this question. To answer it, even though Cindy Bin 2001 might think I'm an alcoholic, no, I'm not. I'm not dependent on alcohol. I try to be really careful with the alcohol and the beers that I drink. I don't binge, rarely ever, maybe once or twice a year, and it's usually at a brew fest, and it's kind of hard just to stick to 1 or 2 beers at a brew fest. Other than that, though, most of the beer that you see me drinking on the channel is the extent of the beer drinking that I do. I don't go out and party or anything like that. I say no to beers all the time, too. If I go out somewhere and there isn't something that I like to drink or want to drink, I'll just order water, and if I go out to drink somewhere, I usually just pick a bar that has craft beers that I know I will like. But I don't really do mixed drinks. I don't do shots. I don't like macro beers. I always really just drink for taste. That's why I drink craft beer. I like the taste of it. That's why I drink certain cocktails, some bourbons and liqueurs here and there. And to me, it's just not worth consuming the calories or the alcohol of something that I don't like the taste of. So question number 6 is, what is my favorite ingredient? in beer. I wish I had a little bit more of a creative answer, but I'm just going to say hops. I love IPAs. I'm a hophead. Galaxy hops, if you want to get specific, they're my favorite kind of hop, but hops are my favorite ingredient in beer. Question number 7. Do I brew? I have not brewed other than one of those stupid like Mr. Beer kits that I tried way back when I was first getting into craft beer. It's something that I've really wanted to get into though. I just haven't had the time to do it yet, but hopefully at some point I plan on getting into brewing my own beer. Question number 8. What was my first beer? Well, the first beer I ever tried was probably just a sip of a Budweiser or a Bud Light or something like that at a family party. The first full beer I ever had was Bud Ice, and yes, it was pretty terrible. The first beer that made me realize that beer could taste good, I told you already, was Blue Moon. And the first craft beer that I remember having that really blew me away was Dogfish Head 60 Minute, and that really just kicked me off into IPAs and kicked me off into exploring craft beer. And finally, the last question, question number 9, who in craft beer do I look up to? I wouldn't say there's anyone that I really look up to. There's definitely people that I find interesting. One would probably be, especially early on, Sam Callione. Dogfish Head used to be my favorite brewery really early on when I was first getting into craft beer. I would watch the quick sip clips of their beers where Sam Callione would describe the beers and how they're made and all that stuff. And he just seemed like a really laid-back guy, and you could tell he really loved craft beer. It was really fun listening to him talk about it. Another person I would throw out there is Greg Cook from Stone. Stone also spent some time as my favorite brewery early on when I was getting into craft beer, and he just seems like a really interesting person. That whole persona he's created around himself, sort of being like the antithesis to big beer, I found really interesting and really cool. And I know he's collaborated with other beer tubers before too, and that's really awesome. A couple other guys I can think of off the top of my head. The guys from Brewdogs, I've watched their TV show before, and I thought it was really fun and interesting. And Augie Carton of Carton Brewing. He actually has a YouTube channel where he talks about all the new beers that he's producing, and he just seems like a really laid-back guy. And he's also on Untappd, so if you've ever checked into a Carton beer on Untappd, it's probably pretty likely that you've been toasted by Augie. You might even be friends with him on there. But you can just tell that he really cares about the beers that he's producing, and it's really cool to see him reaching out on social media to the people that are drinking his beers. In terms of the beer tube community, there's so many of us out there now that I could talk about, but I'll just name a few that I watch pretty regularly. Darwin from Darwin's Beer Reviews is probably number 1. I really trust his opinion on beers. His descriptors I always find really spot on, and I always find myself looking to his videos to see what he thinks about a particular beer. Another one that I'll mention is Beer Geek Nation. I'm sure we've all watched videos from him. I especially watched his videos really early on when I was first getting into beer tubing, but I've always found his descriptors and opinions on beers to be pretty accurate as well. And last but not least, Beer Bros, particularly Keith from Beer Bros. He seems to be the only constant beer bro, but their videos are really fun. I always watch them. We've collaborated in the past. We're really good friends. We have a good relationship, and he's really supportive of my channel. We support each other, and because of that, it's enough for me to forgive him for nominating me for this. All right, so that's going to wrap up frequently asked beer questions. I'm not going to nominate anyone because I'm not sure who hasn't done it yet. And I'm a pretty small channel, so I'm assuming if it's gotten to me, mostly everyone else has done it already. But if you're watching this and you haven't done it yet and you're interested, consider yourself nominated. Until next time, drink responsibly and passionately. Thanks for watching.